Leaders trying to be everything to everyone are the same ones quietly stalling, and how humility scales a career and a business. In today's episode, we'll get into why strategic networks is your most valuable personal board of directors. You'll learn the story of a business that was losing $1 million a day and what turned it around. And it's probably not what you think. Why most CEOs are still cutting costs without first measuring the value they're cutting alongside it. And you'll walk away learning why being your authentic self and leading with humility is your best start to this week. My next guest is the Executive Director of Global Sales and Service and has worked for the largest companies in the world, currently leading more than 1,200 people across data center support, field service engineer and compliance. Across the automotive, construction, equipment, and mining sectors, she has grown businesses, strengthened compliance, and delivered results through these industry's toughest cycles of disruption. Welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Erica Baird.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, so excited. I have to tell the public here, we've just had a brief conversation and literally it's like, we need to press record because this is so juicy. So I'm so excited about this.
I'm
Erica,
excited to be here. It was a good
I'm so
conversation.
glad. I'm so glad. So now you've spent your career as the first Black woman in nearly every room you've walked into. Engineering, mining, automotive, and now leading a global commercial organization with more than 1,200 people. Now, you talk about the power of strategic networking and networks and the discipline of knowing your own weaknesses and also not trying to be everything to all people. So
You can't be, yes.
CEOs listening, what have you learned about how a strategic network builds a career and a business, and why is self-awareness about your own strengths and weaknesses so important?
Well, one, I would say I always call my strategic network my personal board of directors, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the people I go to when I really want to think through a concept that I could be working on, or if I want to think about an example, I'm working on AI. And so I'm leading some of the customer engagement portion of AI. And so I have a strategic network. And sometimes you think of mentors as people who are higher than you. Well, the people who are doing AI, they're not higher than us, they're lower than us, right? And so just humility is important in a strategic network. Being a part of the right associations is important for a strategic network because you never know where that will take you. And I think about very early in my career when I was navigating up through the ranks, I wasn't in a officer position or I wasn't in a role that was a leadership position. But if I wanted to get there, I had to look like I was. And so I had a counterpart in communications who was doing all of the communications for the executives. I would send my presentations over to her. I had a counterpart in governmental affairs, and I would reach out to her if I was giving a presentation for the public and say, hey, give me feedback. Or if I needed someone when I first became a leader in sales, I didn't know how to do a P&L. I was used to, this is my sales goal, this is my profitability goal. So I reached out to that strategic network to understand, okay, how do I ramp up quickly so that I'm delivering what the company needs me to deliver now as a leader? And so to me, a big part of that strategic network is knowing who to go to when you need to find an answer that will deliver the right solutions for our customers. And so,
Do you know, I think it's interesting the higher up you go, though, I wonder your view on how to, how you can make peace with the fact that you have weaknesses. And sometimes it can be a generational thing as well. That we're not in an environment that allows you to make mistakes, certainly here in England, Erica. Um, but also it allows you, we're all, both of us are going through this political situation, but politicians, leaders are not allowed in the media to express their weaknesses. So how do you reconcile that when you're senior in an organization, that a weakness isn't seen as you being weak?
Well, one, everyone has a weakness. So when you're authentically yourself, you know what your strengths are. I'm not trying to be the CFO. I need the CFO. And so if I need to go have a conversation with my counterpart, that's not what I want to do. And so I don't need to be the expert, but I need to have that relationship with the expert. And I also think that a lot of times when people feel like that, to me, that's an insecurity complex. I know what I bring to the table, so I'm not insecure when anyone else walks into the room who's equally talented or talented in an area that I'm not talented in. My first instinct is how do I connect with them because I might need them for this and they're going to need me because I know what I bring to the table. And so for me, I tell my flaws. I think I'm probably almost too transparent as a leader. And my team tells me that, but that's what they appreciate about me is I'm vulnerable and I share what I'm working on. And so that gives them the ability to do the same. And really, that's how you empower people. If I'm afraid to be able to tell you where I have gaps, then I'm never going to be able to get better. And real leadership and real coaching is all driven by knowing where you have opportunities to get better and knowing where you don't need to also. Even if you're weak in that area, you don't need to be everything, like you said, to everybody. So I think just being secure in who you are. And if you have a seat at the table, especially if you're a woman or a woman of color. They didn't just give it to you. You had to earn that.
Yeah, doubly. And every
Yes.
day you're there, you're still earning it doubly. I don't,
Yes.
people outside of that reality have, even if you have earned it, I don't think there is an awareness that you have to keep earning it. You're always having to prove yourself, and it doesn't matter how senior you go, that doesn't ever end, really,
It, it,
sadly.
it never ends. In the US, we call it the black tax or the woman tax, right?
Hmm.
If you're a woman, I have to shut down discussions if there's a leader who says, well, she's a woman and she just had a child. Do you know if her husband stays home? Because there's a lot of women I work with whose husbands stay home. Do we have men are taking paternity leave and they didn't even have a child? Are we having those discussions? No. So why are we having the discussions there? Whenever you see a microaggression, it's just critically important to just call the microaggression out in the room. Let's talk about performance. Did she deliver? Did she meet her goals? Did you stretch her? Did she meet that? Okay, end of discussion about anything else. Let her make the decision on if she's not able to travel or not able to do some of the things that you think that she can't do, but you don't really know the answer. And a lot of times the answer is wrong. And I use the example of myself. I was a single mother. My mother lived with me. So I could go anywhere I wanted in the world. So I was always very clear, take that off the table as a part of the conversation, because if you don't know my situation, ask instead of assuming. And really, in a lot of cases, they know the situation, they just don't want to give them the role. And that's where, when we are in the room, it is so important for us to be that voice. I say all the time, when I'm in the room, I'm what I needed because sometimes I didn't get that support, right?
I love that. When I'm in the room, I'm what I needed. And that's, plays into what you said about always being humble and having
Hmm.
humility, and never forgetting that, whatever your position is. So I absolutely love that about you.
Can you circle back on
Yeah.
that? thought, just what you were saying?
Yeah.
One of the things I think too was it being so hard for me. I think it makes me a fair leader. And I will use the example a lot of times in companies, it's unintentional. We don't mean to do it, but we have unconscious bias. I grew up in the same town as you. My children played softball with your children. You're the next person I'm going to bring with me. But when we're global companies, that isn't going to work everywhere in the world. We need global leaders. That's what I love about the company I work for is when I show up in the room, it's a global room. And that makes a big difference if you want to be successful. You can't have Midwesterns in the middle of China trying to deliver on the business. You need Chinese leaders in China who understand the business and the culture delivering on the business. And so for me, I think it is critically important when we're having those types of conversations to recognize if you've been through the bad side of that, you're always fair. I'm like, do I have enough men on my team? Do I have people from across the globe? Am I leaning too heavily on engineering? Do I need some marketing people in the room in this conversation? And that's how it, a lot of times people think that leaders are diversity leaders. No, I'm not a diversity leader. I'm a fair leader. I pick the best person for the job, and then the output is diversity. And diversity is the game changer. If you look at the companies who truly have leaned into that, it's diversity of thought, it's diversity of people, it's diversity of cultures across the globe. And those are the companies that deliver the results.
I think this is such a powerful point. I often say to leaders, if you want to change your culture to be more diverse, then you need to hire diverse people at a senior level because you naturally, there's two aspects, exactly what you're saying. You're a fair leader. You're always looking for the opportunities uh, in a fair way because you've had a diversity of experience that you can easily empathize with a whole diversity of people. So it's not a barrier for you. You don't need to overcome anything. You're already there with people. And then on the other side is looking in when you have a senior diverse leader, then people think, well, if they're there, I can get there. I have an opportunity, and they're more likely to just apply. So you have a broad resource of people in which to select from.
Well, and I say all the time, if I hired everyone who looked exactly like me, I would have the best of the best and the worst of the worst. But
Yeah.
if I hired the best of the best across every demographic, I'm going to have the best of the best. And so that's how I try to think of things. And if I think of when I was coming up the ranks, I couldn't look up and see anybody who looked like me. And so another part of my fairness is it was a white man above me with a jackhammer hammering through the floor, saying, I'm going to pull Erica through. And so if I get there, I'm going to remember who took care of me also, right? And I think that's what's important is never forget who was there for you and what they did on your behalf. So now you have to do that for other people. I'm a big pay it forward. Someone took the risk and fought for me. So how am I making sure I'm fighting for others?
So I really love this point about allyship and how important that is in across organizations. And so
Yes.
how do you create that environment of allyship? Because you can never do it on your own. You need a breadth of people, and as you say, with the hammer kind of pulling you up. How do you create an organization where allies feel safe?
I think that you're never going to feel safe. I think that's a part of leadership is courage.
Yeah.
I don't think that some of the men who fought for me felt safe.
Mhm.
They just felt like it was the right thing to do. and they did it. I say a lot of times people are like, Erica, how do you do that? I do it afraid. I just do it afraid. And I also feel like when you know what you bring to the table and you identify talent well, when you start speaking up for someone and they know you deliver results, they start looking at the people you pull with you. And so the men who were the allies to me, if they're the right men who are delivering the right results for the company and they identify you as a talent, your talent is should be unquestioned. Is it questioned? Yes. We know every time you go into a new role, you have to prove yourself again. But the right ally opens the door for the next role. Then you go in and you deliver. Now you have another ally. At
Yeah.
least you should. If the leader is securing themselves, you should have another ally, right? Because the job of the employee is to understand what the leader needs and to deliver that. I don't care what you look like. If you come into my organization and you deliver, I'm talking to everyone about why they should steal you.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to lose them, but you need to steal them, right? Because they will deliver for you. And when you have a reputation for delivering results, people listen to what you say.
You never forget your mentors, you never forget your sponsors. And I think it's easy to pay it forward because there has been someone that really sees you. And often they're people that see more in you than you see in yourself.
That's
And that's
true.
a wonderful gift.
It is a wonderful gift. And again, I think it goes back to just empathy and care because I remember being a single mom. So when I see a single father struggling in a situation, I reach out to them and say, "How can I help you?" Because I remember what it felt like when I see a engineer who is in a room full of marketeers. I'm like, "Hey, do I need to get you some support on your presentation style? Because it's a completely different presentation style. How can I help you?" I remember being the engineer in the room who needed the support for marketing, right? And so I think when you're a good leader, you look around and you understand what your people need, and then you get them what they need so that they can be successful.
Yeah, love it, love it. Okay, so for the listeners that are listening on Spotify, please do hit the home button and hit follow to make sure that these episodes will automatically land in your inbox. I record twice a month and bring in incredible leaders like Erica and asking her hopefully some challenging questions because we want to get the goods and and really learn from her experience. And I'm absolutely loving this conversation, Erica. So let's get back to it. And
Let me tell them though, they do need to hit subscribe because I've listened to a couple and I got some things out of them. So it's really good.
brilliant, brilliant. So, as a global leader of commercial operations across some of the most complex, highly regulated industries in the world, what is the single biggest revenue mistake that you see leaders making today?
I would say I have a couple of answers in that space. One, I think the first thing that is the biggest gap is they have siloed thinking. When you're a large matrix organization, you can not only think about the impact to your bottom line. When you think about shareholders, they're not asking about a business unit, they're asking about what is the company's stock price, period. That's the whole company. And so sometimes the you have to understand if another part of the business is booming, you may need to scale back a little bit because you're not delivering at the same level. But the company's going to win right now. They're carrying us, and there will be times, especially in cyclical businesses, where we're going to carry them. And so that's just how the business works. And when you only focus on your own area, you forget the rest of the company and their needs. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. I think the other one is we spend so much time looking at revenue, but do we peel back the onion of revenue? And I use an example of I had a team and we were hitting record level sales and everyone was like, yeah, we're knocking it out of the park. But we were also, it's post COVID, you're seeing price increases. But if you peel back some of the onion on and you take out the price increases and you take out if you're a cyclical business and you actually look deeper, are they really increasing sales based on flat price over flat price? And then you start leaning in and saying, oh, we have an opportunity in this space. Do we need some training? Is there a pricing issue? What is the real issue? And how can we get them what they need so that they can grow the business? So again, a top line number is not always the right number. And two, revenue for revenue's sake is not always a win. We need profitable revenue, right? And so how are we leaning in? And then I will just say one last thing in that space. So I'm sorry for going long,
No, it's okay.
but I have seen where we've had people come and say, oh, this salesperson delivered $20 million. They're a rock star. And this salesperson only delivered $4 million and we need to do something. Well, when you dig deeper, you understand that the salesperson who had 4 million was calling on 100 accounts and generating all this business that had the potential to really grow. And the person who had 20 really should have been at 60 million because they were farming, the word that we discussed that
Yeah.
we don't always love, because a farmer should still be out hunting and they should still be hungry. Is there more business within this customer? Are we getting all the share of wallet that we should be with this customer? If not, why not? And is there a customer up the road because you have more capacity because you only have one customer that you could be trying to break into and grow the business? So really understanding what is the number beneath the number is what drives real revenue in my mind.
And one of the interesting stats that I like to use is that your existing customers, and you've got roughly the 80 20 rule of 20% of your customers can create 80% of your revenue. But when you look at that 20%, 80% of that 20% will not necessarily be your top performing customers in 5 years. And I'm sure that as we go on with the world accelerating, then that maybe 5 years would be 3 years. So to your point of the person that's calling on all of those accounts, they could be the top performers in the future. So kind of really looking underneath what the numbers are telling you, but also what is the trend going forward and the opportunities.
Well, and I remember early in my career, I showed up in a territory and they wouldn't work with us. And what I found out from doing some past research is we had a big project in town. And we were like, come back when you're a big boy, come back when you're a big boy. Well, when that project left, they were the big boys and they
Mm,
remember, and people have long memories. So I think what you said right there is incredibly important in always making sure that you're chasing. And if I was to think even further, one of the things that we do as a team is I want to understand, one, what is my CEO's goals and what is the top goals for my leader. But then I also want to understand, back to getting away from the silo thinking. Let's look across the organization and let's follow the money,
yeah.
because where the money is, not just now, because most companies have a 10-year projection, right? Where is the money going to be in 10 years? Because you have to start thinking now on where you're going to place salespeople, where you're going to invest in sales enablement, where you need tools, what languages do you need, what trainings do you need, how many technicians do you need to onboard in that territory? You have to think beyond today, because today is not tomorrow. And we see that, you go back to the old Kodaks and the Blockbusters, they were thinking about today. Tomorrow came, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. What about an example of a company that's improved revenue performance, and what actually changed?
Well, I think a lot of the things that we already talked about will
Hmm.
change a company's revenue performance. But I think one of the most dynamic changes I saw is a change in culture. And I worked at a company and they were losing a lot of money a day. And I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, it was an unbelievable amount of money. And they brought in a new vice president, and that vice president changed the whole values. But he didn't just put them on the wall, he put them into action. If you didn't live up to those values of treating people with respect, listening to the people at the bottom, if you didn't treat people with care, then you were gone. And what they found was when people were empowered to speak, they found ideas. And over a period of like 2 years, it went from losing 4 times the amount. So he had grown the business almost by $500 million in profitability just by listening to his people, treating people with respect, valuing what people are saying. I think a lot of times, if I was to say my secret weapon as a leader, is I remember how I felt when I wasn't listened to at the bottom, right? And so I still, anywhere I go, I try to walk the manufacturing floors and hear what they need, or I go to the branches and I hear what the technicians need, or I'm reaching out to salespeople to understand what they need because they're the ones in the trenches. And then how do we come back in leadership and give them what they need to make their life easier and to enable and empower them to sell more? So I think it's just remembering that listening is important
I
and
think this
remembering when you were them.
Mm. I think this what's really well, it's all important, but what kind of resonated with me is that when we're thinking about revenue, we're thinking about numbers. But actually, in this example, it's all about people. And I think in the revenue operation, we sometimes forget that, AI is going to, simply automate and accelerate, but if you haven't got the right people in the right seats, if you don't have the right culture and environment for those people to thrive, and you've said how important that is several times, it's still a people business. It's not a numbers business. It's the people that drive the numbers. And it's about never forgetting that. And it's quite interesting that the complete turnaround was all you mentioned was about the culture, not necessarily the numbers.
You empower people. And if I think about even AI, right? And my long-term vision is not, are we going to let go of people? You can read all the Harvard Business Reviews about how companies who have done that have hurt themselves. What we're thinking about in my mind is how do we utilize these tools to grow the business without having to add additional people, right? Because we can empower people to be more productive. Like it is an amazing tool to empower the magnificent people that companies already have to just deliver more, right? And so that's it's a tool, but you still need people, and it is still artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, it's artificial. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, before we close, and I'm definitely got to have you on again because there's so many questions that I'd love to ask you. So it'll be good for the audience to listen out for another episodes with Erica Beard. So you've mentioned before that faith is your foundation.
Yes.
So talk to me more about, your faith as your core personal value.
When I think about that as a core personal value, I think that one, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have it, right? Because there were some hard times and early in my career, they didn't want me here, but I was meant to be here. I went to school, I earned my place in the room, and I needed the courage to keep fighting when everything was fighting against me. And then the right people came into my path. But two, I think sometimes with faith, it allows me to be courageous. Like I have people on my team who I remember one of the ladies on my team, she was gay. And she was very concerned at first because I was not. But I'm like, equal rights, equal pay for equal rights. If you deliver, that's what matters, right? At the end of the day, I have to have the courage to say, I hope that we are evaluating this person on performance and that alone, and the person delivers, right? And so, again, it's all about how do you have the tough conversations. And I think I am able to have tough and uncomfortable conversations because I know that I don't have the spirit of fear, right? When we do right by people and people know that we care about them and we do the courageous things, if you think about business, big risk, big reward. And so I'm not afraid of the big risk because I believe on the other side of the big risk is the reward. If I've treated people fairly, I bring in the right people, I fight to get them what they need. I think that that just empowers me.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And this has been a thread all the way through your conversation, Erica, how you've very much grounded in your experience coming up and never forgotten and been humble and used your humility in order to pull through the right people that and reflecting on the people that pulled you through as well. As you say, the path has not been easy, but you've made sure that remained grounded in your values. So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much. So
Thank you for having me
how can listeners get hold of you, Erica?
on LinkedIn. So I'm not as active as I used to be, but I still go out there and I follow people because I love to listen to people have these types of conversations. So they can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And actually, I better get a promise out to you. Will you come onto the podcast again? I've got.
Of course, I have
Oh,
enjoyed you.
fantastic.
So
Fantastic. Well,
thank you.
thank you, Erica. I really appreciate you. And thank you for sharing all of your insights. Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Thank you for having me.
If this conversation has given you food for thought, hit subscribe so the next one finds you. Twice a month, I bring on CEOs and operators genuinely moving the needle on revenue, not theory, not fluff. Drop your biggest takeaway in the comments below. I read everyone. Until next time, keep scaling your sales.